My name is Yoshi. I am the Japan product manager for LinkedIn, but based here, so just for a little today. And at the risk of repeating what everybody else said, I will talk about key factors in Japan market entry. There we go. So the biggest mistake you can make when coming to Japan is thinking that it's super easy, that your product and your service is just so great and you don't need to do anything special when you go to Japan. I assume since most of you are here in this room, you're probably not going to make that mistake. So the second biggest mistake is thinking, oh my God, it's so hard, it's so different, it's such a big challenge, I'm giving up and not doing it at all. So that's also a mistake because Japan is a fantastic opportunity and it's a great market. So from our perspective at LinkedIn, these are some of the challenges that we deal with. I don't know if any of you are Japanese in the room or have experience there, but probably a lot of these speak to your personal sort of experience in the market. So your identity is corporate, not an individual. Well, kind of a big problem for LinkedIn, for example. I think the point here is that you can't really get debilitated by this. It's a Gordian knot. You have to start cutting it somewhere. And for us, we chose, we really need to focus on the localization and getting it to actually work in the initial parts of my experience there. So know all your problems, understand them, but really focus on the most important. It's not going to take just one thing. It's probably going to take several. Second part is take the time to really understand your market. There is no quote-unquote Japanese user. So because Japan is so different, because it's just such a foreign place from an American perspective, we tend to lump all Japanese people into one category. So, oh, this will work in Japan. This is good for Japanese people. These are just a few of the separate segments that we see using our products, or importantly, not using our product over in Japan. Just like anywhere else, these different segments have different needs. And there's many ways to group them, but the best way is by their needs and by their behaviors. You can do a lot of stuff here. You can talk to experts, you can do market research, but honestly, there's really no substitute for actually just going to Japan, spending a lot of time there, and getting a big, a really, really big read on the market. Don't think it's so simple, and when you have a pretty big challenge initially, which every foreign company does, you really have to be smart about, okay, who are we actually serving and how are we serving them. Let me get my speaker notes here. So, my favorite slide. So, don't underestimate your non-product challenges. So, in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, we have a very product-centric mentality. If there is a pain point, if somebody has a problem, and you solve it with this fantastic thing you built, that's the end of the story. It's actually never the end of the story. Even here, you have to have things like marketing and operations and all kinds of other stuff. But I think the difference in Japan is that the story is just so much more complicated in that awareness is an issue. But even more so than that, even if you have a product that actually really does solve a problem for people, if you're not from Japan, they're not going to trust you. So getting that trust and credibility, as been mentioned by several people before me, is actually really, really important. You've heard it 3 times, it's definitely important. So the key question that comes out of that is well, how do you actually get this trust, right? So your LinkedIn, nobody knows about you. There's many ways. One way is partnerships, and so I put Microsoft up there. It's not actually a partner, it's our parent company, but it's basically leveraging another brand that you can be affiliated with that does have that trust and credibility in Japan. A lot of other people do it in a different way. So for example, Facebook, when they went there, they partnered up with Dentsu. They partnered up with Recruit, very big Japanese firms that helped them get that foothold in the market. Second one is media. So media fragmentation of channels hasn't happened in Japan to the degree it has here. So getting on TV, getting written up in publications is super important. You have to manage a lot of your story through the people who tell it, because people do read these things and they carry a lot of weight. And the third thing, as Talia mentioned, is just what we're here for, events. You have to get out and actually meet people in person. It's something that is kind of tough because it doesn't really scale, but in Japan you just sort of have to do it. And the last part, again, mentioning it again like others, you have to commit to Japan. If you decide that Japan is a good opportunity for you, you have to not only invest a lot of money, you have to invest a lot of time, and if you're really going to go local, you have to build a great team. So this is me with glasses, and this is everybody else who's working on LinkedIn Japan, or at least some of them right now. And it took a long time to hire all these people. But we did it, we're committed, and hopefully we'll succeed. We haven't quite done it yet.
Time for questions.
Questions, go ahead.
I was in Japan, been a long time. First time was pre-mobile, second time was post-mobile, very recently, for a total of 16 years. And I would get a lot of invites on, not on LinkedIn, but on Facebook. And the mentality was very different. I mean, these are work colleagues that I don't really want to know what I'm doing, right? But I would get tons and tons of them. And it's like totally different concept of using Facebook than we have in the States. Because, as you know, they're worried about what the company will think if they do something that's corporate. So I actually didn't answer them for a while, then I started answering them. LinkedIn didn't exist at that time, and now I think you've got some very savvy Japanese people that are westernized, have been here, that have nice profiles. But even those people are, I think, still not as many as you want. I guess my question for you, Yoshi, is what are you going to be able? What is the biggest challenge you face, given the fact that, as you said, the corporate identity is everything, and the association with the corporate is everything. To be able to sort of go to the next level and get it okay for these people to make the decision to go to LinkedIn. Because even in the US, nobody says have a LinkedIn account, but everybody does. Mm-hmm. And in Japan, unless they say that, they're not going to feel comfortable having a LinkedIn account. How are you, sorry, maybe a complicated question, but I'm just curious.
Well, there are no non-complex questions for LinkedIn Japan, and unfortunately there aren't any really good answers either. So one thing is when you say, like I think going back to the second slide or whatever, like when you said like these people, right, these Japanese people who use Facebook, my sort of, the circles that I run in Japan are like very much those kinds of people. But when you actually go and talk to like a wide sort of selection of professionals, many people actually aren't like that, and I was pretty shocked to learn this, right? So Facebook is LinkedIn in Japan in many ways.
Yeah.
Part of that was deliberate, and part of that is really, people who use Facebook for professional networking are like power users.
Yeah.
That they're definitely part of, they're getting a lot of value out of that. So in terms of like how we actually do this, I think there's probably like a few ways, right? First of all is like, we can't go and completely recreate LinkedIn in a very different way there, right? Like that's not, who we are, what, a lot of product companies kind of do. But we can make small adjustments. One of them is actually there. If you want to scan to connect with me, that's one thing. As I think Talia mentioned, meeting people offline is how it was really done in Japan. So there's product parts. There's actually like a pretty big community aspect to it too as well. So like, why would you ever use LinkedIn when you have your entire network on Facebook? Well, like I think there's a lot of things that we do better. Part of them is a community of like discussion around stuff that is exclusively professional, right? You're not going to like scroll through your Facebook through all the pictures of ramen and dogs, only to see somebody's like article they posted about the latest startup or something like that. So like we're far from being successful in a lot of these parts, but the really big problem is that it's actually, those people only represent like kind of a small part of professionals in Japan. There's a lot of other people, and I think those those 3 slides were kind of a clue, was like those 3 pictures they don't even use Facebook. Facebook has 28 million users there, and the growth has plateaued. They're not really doing very well in Japan, full stop. And I think that really speaks to the fact that they haven't made as many product adjustments in Japan as they could have. So I think the jury is out whether we'll have to do that or not.